The man Nelson Mandela, the man who rose above all odds to achieve what was greater for him and also for the rest of South Africa. The first black president of the Republic of South Africa, spending some 27 years in jail, and then following that with that very high rising position for his own people. Well, he's since passed on, but his legacy will always live with us. A legacy that a generation will always be talking about. And talking about a generation, I have a current crop of young political leaders in the studio. I have Alex Afenyo-Markin. He's a member of parliament for Efutu in the central region, a member of the MPP, a legal practitioner as well. And I have him in the studio. Thanks for joining me. Another legal practitioner who is also a member of parliament for Busa North, a member of the NDC, and also a deputy minister for the interior is James Agaga. What do you think of the man Nelson Mandela?
Well, Nelson Mandela undoubtedly is an iconic figure. You need to visit his residence in Soweto, South Africa, and when I did that, it was a humbling experience for me. When I saw that that was where the great man lived throughout the apartheid struggle until his arrest, I was really humbled. Beyond that, Mandela has left so many, if you like, footprints, which should serve as an example for all those who aspire for leadership roles in every human endeavor. For instance, this is a person who suffered, he was incarcerated for 27 good years, and he walked the talk. He demonstrated whilst in office that, look, it was not about grabbing power. That is why he stood for all the principles that he stood for. He relinquished power after just one term. And so that shining example ought to be emulated by many leaders across the globe. If you consider the fact that there is still dictatorship in some parts of the world, then Mandela's example clearly is a milestone. Whilst Mandela was out of office, he continued to play the role of an African statesman. Everywhere he went, he was hailed. He continued to preach peace. He continued to preach unity. He was never vindictive. And I think that that is the legacy Mandela has left behind, and today South Africa is what it is. Everybody wants to go to South Africa. It's about the most developed country in Africa. I mean, if Mandela had been vindictive, all the gains would have been brought to naught. And so the setting aside of 18th July as Mandela Day, for me, is very timely. It is a welcome gesture that everybody must embrace.
Well, this man, I see him as a man of reality. He lived a life that was not pretentious. He had access to power, and he felt that he needed to create an enabling environment for all to benefit. Like my brother said, he demonstrated his enduring patience for the whole world to see. And to me, one thing striking about him was when I listened to one of his several interviews he granted after he was set free. And he said one thing, that look, at the time the mantle of leadership fell on him and he took over the leadership of ANC, it wasn't as though he was the most qualified person. There were more senior members who were more qualified, such that he could not see himself engaging them even in any serious political discussions. But they gave it to him. And that was enough to get him to do the best out of what he could offer. To me, that statement, is something that we, the youth or people who aspire into leadership, must consider. That it's not always about thinking that you are better than even the person in that leadership role. You are older than the person. You are more experienced than the person. But when that person gets the opportunity, you give him all your support. On the other hand, if you get it as a leader, don't see yourself that because you've had it, even where somebody has more experience, that you have to tap into his knowledge. You decide that because you are the leader, you are all in all. Leadership is a privilege. You are the primus inter pares. Somebody else could do it. There are equal potentials, but you get it. And today, like my good brother has said, that character Mandela has given an image to a land that previously was known for its ugly nature. And now everybody wants to go there. Every serious investor would want to, you know, set up in South Africa. And we couldn't have done anything better in honor of his memory than, you know, the 18th July International Day that has been set up.
In the last century, we've had a number of leaders who have had many sides. And James, you talked about how Nelson Mandela's life and virtues and what he stood for should always be an example for all kinds of people, whether it's Nkrumah, Lee Kuan Yew, or whoever we want to talk about. It seems as if the congregation of the virtues of a persona, of whoever a human being should be, who metamorphoses into a leader, was always ascribed to the man Nelson Mandela. Can we say leaders of the current generation can always learn from him? Are they learning from him? Will they say they will learn from him?
Well, I think that the question, of course, clearly has answers. Mandela's example is a shining one, which ought to be emulated. When I look around us, I can see a crop of, new leaders emerging on our political landscape who clearly believes in some of the virtues that Mandela clearly espoused whilst he was alive, and of course in leadership. They are not too eager to cling on to power at all costs. We see them all around us. We, of course, can also talk about leaders who are selfless. They want to work for their countries. It is not a part of them, their strategy, to amass wealth at the expense of the ordinary people that they govern. That is a clear, shining example that ought to be emulated. And Mandela clearly stood for some of those things. But of course, if you also look around us, there are those leaders who also don't espouse some of the virtues, some of the good things that Nelson Mandela chalked in his lifetime. I mean, we still have a few dictators around us, and I clearly talked about that fact in Africa. Some of our leaders have simply been in power for too long. Fortunately for us as a country, we all agreed in 1992 that we're going to limit the tenure of office of our presidents, and so you cannot accuse our modern generation, of leaders in this country of hanging on too long in power, because we clearly have a constitutional limitation. You can stand for the high office of president for just 2 terms, the aggregate of which is 8 years in office. We saw that under President Rawlings, we saw that under President Kufuor, and that is the order which has been established, the constitutional order. And so I think that Ghana is not doing badly, in that regard. But earlier on, I said that if you visit President Mandela's house in Soweto, you'll be humbled. And I told my good brother and colleague, Honorable Afenyu, to do well and visit his residence anytime he visits South Africa. Look, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, the apartheid regime offered him all the best of places.
The best lashes that you can
in Soweto. He declined and went back to live with his people in a simple 2-bedroom semi-detached apartment. He loved to live there. The only time Nelson Mandela vacated the premises was when his own security, the national security in South Africa, could no longer guarantee his security, because in the morning, early in the morning, people thronged the place, to see Madiba, to chat with him, to eat with him. He mingled freely with the people. That was the only time President Mandela left that place. And no, he never acquired any other properties. That is the only house Mandela truly owned in his life. And when I entered the premises, I saw an inscription. Mandela himself had described how proud he was to own such a property. What a humble person he was. And so, but we have a crop of, leaders who clearly aspire to, of course, belong to the leaders who believe in the vision of President Mandela. And we're not doing badly. Ghana in particular, as a country.
We're not doing badly, are we? You also buy into that vision of a speech.
Well, I don't
by your colleague.
I don't want to do politics on this, but your view of how people are emulating the virtues of Mandela can be very subjective. You cannot
very relative.
You cannot subject it to any objective test. It depends on how you see it. If you talk about dictatorship, for instance, and you want to cite Mugabe, he would also give you some strong justifications why he still wants to remain in office. You know, he's a freedom fighter. He thinks that he needs to stabilize and all that. He would give you his reasons. There may be people who would want to adore him. But just situating this in the context of Mandela and whether or not we're having leaders on the continent
and in
who
our country
are actually, oh well, don't get me. Leaders in our continent. This money is not for politics, you know.
No, we're not doing politics.
I don't want to narrow it.
I'm sure the politics will come.
I don't want to narrow it to
with what I have
to the presidency, you know. But I'm talking generally on the African continent.
No, I'm not necessarily talking that if you're talking about Ghana, I always talk about the presidency.
We have embraced.
Oh, James, we
have embraced democracy. We don't have very strong leaders on our continent that are offering, you know, international political leadership. I mean, that I'm yet to see, because the days of Nkrumah and the days of this man Obasanjo and co, you know, you could hear of Mbeki when Kufuor got onto the scene. You could see that, you know, leadership where they end that international, you know, recognition. Okay, this is the man today. You know, if you look at the way international politics is going, you don't see any one person who stands out, you know, to speak for Africa. And that, to me, is very disturbing, you know. So much as our leaders are, you know, espousing some new visions here and there, it is important for them to put up a posture that would earn them some international respect, so that when there are some very critical issues on the continent and they get up to speak, they will be taken more seriously. When it comes to this issue of acquisition of wealth and whether our leaders are leading very simplistic lives, you know, whether they are very sincere and are not pretentious, I find it difficult to say that on the African continent our leaders are as sincere as Mandela was. I find it difficult to conclude that way. So going forward, I believe that if our commitment is to ensure that the people that we govern really taste true development, it is important to take a clear stand, which will be a departure from the past, where it is business as usual, continuous politics, populist, you know, ideologies, and just trying to please the masses, playing to the gallery, and where there are problems, we do blame game. If really we want to focus and give a new direction to our leadership, we must look at some long-term policy decisions that would benefit the people. I mean, if we continue to pretend things are right and things are not, if we continue to pretend we have the people at heart and we know
we don't have.
We don't. The reality would be that one day the people will tell us in the face that we are a failure, and that we must not allow to happen. Mandela did not get it all rosy. I mean, the last interview I think we watched before we got on there, you know, there were countless times that the man, people could walk to him to even tell him that he had not delivered. People could tell him his peace of mind. But he didn't use a state security apparatus to intimidate and frustrate them, to prove to them where the power lies. At a point, this man said, look, he has grown to a level that he has become emotionless. If somebody tells you that, look, as for me, I don't really get worried. I am determined to ensuring that right things are done. Can we get to that stage in our political, leadership in Ghana, in Africa, so that at the end of the day, people will take us serious? To end this, let me be very sincere with you, and I believe that, Roland, if I put you on the spot, you will tell me that the generality of Ghanaians don't really think that politicians in Ghana today really care about them.
They don't. Really.
Yes.
Yes.
And I feel it on the streets on daily basis. People will talk to you when it gets to credibility, trust. They think that, oh, these people are a kind of people. So I am using this day to urge all of us on both sides of the political aisle, those of us we are now coming up, that we should be agents of change. Give some hope to the people who vote for us. They will vote for us, all right, but at the back of their minds, these people, I don't trust them. That is why they may even want to take money from you when it comes to voting. That is why they will tell you that, look, if you don't do this, we will also not vote for you, or will not even vote at all, because they know that it is just one-off opportunity. They won't get it again. So it's a new beginning. I mean, if really we want to follow the virtues of Mandela and create the enabling environment for our country and Africa, so that the paradise we crave for, we would have it right here.